Your Civil Defense presents Rescue from Basements. Someday, if disaster strikes, either nuclear attack or natural disaster, our rescue team will have its hands more than full rescuing trapped and injured people from damaged buildings. To be ready, we must train regularly so that if and when it happens, we'll be able to handle the job properly and efficiently. It's like keeping your insurance premiums paid up, just in case. Today, we will learn about rescue from basements, one of the most likely places in which persons may be trapped. Figure it out for yourself. Basements usually provide the best protection against blast, so people still in the target area, when warning is given, will take shelter in basements. But rescuing persons trapped in basements can be a real tough job, even more so than rescuing from upper floors. For instance, a basement of a damaged or collapsed building is sure to be dark and dusty. Ever try to work under makeshift lighting in a dark and dusty, confined space? It's no picnic, even under normal conditions. Maybe the blast has caused the upper floors to pancake into the basement, or maybe the entire building, including floors and outside walls, has collapsed into the basement area. In either case, people on an upper floor, when the bomb hit, may have fallen or ridden the floor down into the basement. In fact, this can happen in any type of building collapse, whether pancake, lean-to, or V-shape. We know that basements are used mostly for storage and as the location for heating facilities. But they can also have many more uses. In our rescue training, we should become familiar with these uses so that we'll be able to cope with any situation we run into. For example, in some basements you might find kitchens or even cafeterias, particularly in restaurants or hotels. Manufacturing activities. Boiler rooms, utility connections, such as gas, water, and electricity, and other building operating machinery. So you can see the survival of people trapped in a basement may depend on us. We've got to be on our toes for this training session.
Here's the pitch for tonight, fellows. We're going to discuss what basements are, the areas they may cover, access to basements, damage possibilities, working procedures of the rescue team, hazards, and safety precautions. Let's take a look at some drawings. Almost everywhere in this city there are homes and commercial buildings that have basements or cellars. In other words, floors below the ground level. Now, some large buildings may even have several basements, which we generally call sub-basements. Basements don't always occupy the same ground area as the building above. Sometimes they are built under only part of this area, and then again, maybe they'll extend beyond the building and go under sidewalks, streets, and alleys, extending all the way to another building. This picture shows you some other types of underground structures that you'll have to consider as basements in your rescue job. For instance, subways or garages without structures above them. Also, it's important to know how to get into the basements under normal conditions. In other words, we should know something about the various kinds of buildings. For example, most buildings have interior access stairways from the floor above. Some commercial and industrial buildings will have elevator or dumbwaiter shafts. laundry chutes or conveyor belts between the basement and upper floor. Other buildings have outside stairways to basements, usually in an areaway, in addition to the interior means of entrance. And of course, many partial basements have windows above ground level, while others have windows in areaways or window wells. Some basements may have only one means of entrance, just a trapdoor, or a trapdoor and ladder, either on the inside or outside of a building. The root or storm cellars in rural areas, which have saved so many lives, are one example of these. In built-up areas, commercial buildings often have coal chutes, trapdoors, or elevators with access to the sidewalks or someplace near the building itself. Yes, Fred, you have a question?
Yes, question. Suppose the regular access to the basement is blocked by rubble from the collapse of the same building or the next building. What's our next step? Do we clear it or what?
Depends on the situation. You'll have to size it up. If it looks faster that way, clear it. But it may be quicker to find some other opening or connection to the basement, like a window or ventilator duct. In some cases where size up of the situation is difficult and where enough rescue workers are available, it may be best to try to gain entrance to the basement at 2 or more points. For instance, you might start to clean the elevator shaft from the floor above and also clear a lane through the rubble to a basement window on the outside. Let's look now at some more pictures and drawings and talk about damage. One thing to remember is that outside walls of a basement are less likely to be damaged by blast if they're below the ground. Obviously, they don't get the full force of the blast. You'll find that exterior basement walls and other basement foundation walls will be more resistant to blast than walls on upper floors. That's because they're usually thicker and built of stronger materials. There's more chance of a basement ceiling being damaged than its walls because the floor above will receive the full load of debris from the upper floors, except where the debris is blown away from the building. Even then, the floor above the basement may receive a heavy load of debris from the adjoining building. We've been talking pretty much in generalities so far. And now let's get down to specific cases where the upper floors collapse and the weight of the rubble causes the first floor to break in the middle. The floor may be torn loose at the sides, but may still hold in a lean-to position. You can see that voids against basement walls are often formed in this way. Voids where people may be trapped and yet still protected from the main load of rubble. These voids, which often may be your means of getting to trapped people, most likely will form against the longest wall. That's because the floor joists usually span the narrow width of the room. Well, fellas, we're going to spend the rest of this evening working on our equipment. Now, since tomorrow is Saturday, we've agreed to go out on a field training exercise on this same subject, rescue from basements. I'll have a couple of old hands there to illustrate rescue techniques. Let's size up the situation first. Remember, an injured rescue worker is a double casualty. One less man on the rescue team and one more casualty for the first aid and medical people. Pretty messy, huh? Well, just remember this. Usually, the most practical way to get into a basement from the outside is by clearing the known entrance of obstacles. Debris clearance, opening a lane through the rubble. In some cases, when simpler methods can't be used, you'll have to construct a tunnel through the rubble if there is enough time and manpower. Sometimes, when other ways are blocked, you'll have to breach basement walls, maybe from one room in the basement to another, or even from the basement of an adjoining building. In tougher cases, you may have to sink a shaft through the rubble and earth. Naturally, you try to breach the wall at a point where the opposite side has a chance of being clear of rubble, or where you know there is a void. Okay, let's suppose you're lucky that day. You reach a void. You don't push your luck too far. Right away, you strengthen that void with timber props or struts to prevent further collapse. And they'll speed up their tunnel job by trying to connect some of the voids in the basement, or by using a basement wall as the side of a tunnel. Other times, you'll find rescue can be done faster and safer by raising the floor with jacks or levers from the rescue truck. But no matter what the method is, you're steering clear of trouble and stand a better chance of getting the casualty out alive if you take time to shore and stabilize dangerous parts of the building. That way, you control shifting of the rubble and prevent further collapse. Make no mistake about it, fellas, the base of the building is the basement. Regardless of the type of structure, whatever's above you is supported by basement walls, posts, and columns. Forget this, and you're liable to end up a casualty yourself. Not only can the debris shift or fall, but there's dust to worry about. Dust and poor ventilation, both for you and the casualty. You may have a respirator, but the casualty hasn't. So give that a thought, too. Dangers all the way. Escaping gas, water flooding, exposed electrical connections, even fire. Basements seem to have all the hazards. You're going to rely on the careful operations of the rescue team members working on upper floors. But if they aren't careful, you may be faced with falling objects of the shifts of structural parts of the building. Now, that's where the squad or team leader must exercise good supervision before an accident happens. There are 8 good safety precautions to remember. One of them is keeping your helmet on your head. If you don't, you're liable to lose it, and I don't mean your helmet. During training, now, get all the dope you can from utility companies or municipal engineering offices on the best means of handling utilities during basement rescue operations. And keep up to date. Procedures may change as better methods are developed. Stay as close to walls as you can. Walls that appear from the outside to have sustained the least damage. Don't light any matches. There won't be any no smoking signs in the basement, but you've got to be on guard against fire and gas hazards without being reminded all the time. Always have an ace up your sleeve. While you're doing your job, keep an eye peeled for a strong part of the building that you could get to quickly in an emergency, under a stairway, or fireplace, or closet. Don't move furniture or debris any more than you have to. And if you do move something, be darn sure that it's not supporting a beam or a fallen floor. Otherwise, you may end up on the wrong end of a blood plasma tube. And that's the way the lesson went today. We're learning how to do rescue work in basements the safe way, the right way. As future squad or team leaders in the expanding Civil Defense Rescue Service, we've learned that rescue operations in basements must be done according to proven rules and procedures. Learn the rules, practice them, and stick with them. That's the way to save lives, your life and the lives of the trapped casualties we'll be helping in that D-Day that may be just around the basement corner.